International SOI Ireland. Fiona has worked in disability sport for 18 years. She joined SOI in 2016 following almost a decade working in Special Olympics Ireland, focusing primarily on coach education development at national level. During her time there, she developed a number of coach education programs, which are first Special Olympics coach education programs certified through the National Coaching Development Program for Ireland. She was also certified as Level 2 coach tutor through Sport Ireland Coaching, then Coaching Ireland, and continues to work as volunteer coach developer with Special Olympics Ireland. She joined the high performance team at the Paralympics Ireland in 2013, providing performance operational support to the Rio 2016 team during the build-up to the Rio 2016 Paralympic Games. Since joining the Special Olympics Ireland, Fiona had been working with colleagues to develop Special Olympics global coach education system. Through the past 4 years, SOI has launched its first online learning portal, which provides online education training opportunities for coaches and other key volunteer groups. She is currently developing SOI's global coach developer training program, which will launch in 2020. In 2020, Fiona completed the International Council for Coaching Excellence, Coach Developer Training, and Nippon Sports Science University Coach Developer Academy. She holds a BSc Sport and Exercise Science and MSc Medicine and Science in Sport and Exercise. A warm welcome to you, Fiona. Scott Gerson. He began his involvement with Special Olympics as a unified partner in tennis at the age of 9 in the United States. He has continued volunteering in coaching and competing over the last 15 years and is deeply passionate about the inclusion of all people. He has professional experience as a physical education teacher in school for students with emotional and behavioral disabilities, in addition to experience on Special Olympics North America Unified Champions Schools team as an event coordinator. He currently serves as the Global Youth Engagement Specialist at Special Olympics headquarters in Washington, D.C., United States. A warm welcome to you, Scott. Dr. Michael Messerole. Michael is an assistant director for the School of Health and Kinesiology at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. Dr. Messerole also serves as the director of the Physical Education Teacher Preparation Program. He has over 30 years teaching experience at the P12 and post-secondary levels in physical education and adaptive physical education. He is also the co-author of the Unified Physical Education Resource Manual and has authored articles regarding unified physical education. Dr. Mike coaches a Special Olympics swim team and officiates wheelchair basketball. He's a dynamic presenter who makes learning fun by making sure all students feel included, challenged, and experience success. Dr. Messerole believes we are more alike than we are different, and games are not sacred, people are. On behalf of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, Khelo India, a warm welcome to Ms.Fiona Murray. Warm welcome to you. A warm welcome to Dr. Mike. And a warm welcome to Scott. All the three together are going to make this session, I know, a really amazing one. And all are looking forward to your sessions. I also would like to welcome the president of IPASCA, Dr. Rosa. Warm welcome to you. I welcome Luisa, a speaker for tomorrow's session. A warm welcome to you. I welcome Dr. Sanjay. We also have a panelist, Ms. Tiffany Brar, who will be joining us very soon. I welcome Darlene Kluka. We're waiting for you. I'm happy she's with us. And I welcome all my dear PE teachers. It's actually, this platform is for you. And once again, on behalf of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, a warm welcome to our distinguished speakers. Fiona, please, for session, please.
Thank you, Dr. Usha. I'm just going to get ready to share my screen here with you all. So thank you for your patience just for a second. Let me know if that looks okay, Dr. Usha.
Yeah, fine.
Yep. Yes. Okay. Well, great. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us here for this session. And thank you, Dr. Usha, for kindly inviting Scott, Mike, and I back to join for this second round of the program. We're really happy to be here. What we were going to do is take you through a couple of different areas of Special Olympics. Initially, I'm going to provide you with a little bit of an introduction to what Special Olympics is and talk a little bit about some of our sport and coaching work and some of the inclusive coaching strategies and tools that we really like. Scott's going to then share with you an introduction into Special Olympics Unified Champion Schools. And then finally, we'll hand over to Mike to lead us out on the blaze of glory as he talks about inclusion and unified physical education. But Scott and Mike will talk to those topics in a far better way than I can. So I will say no more on them, and I will move on with the content that I'm going to share with you today. Please do feel free to share some questions in the question box if you have any for us, and we'll try and answer them as we progress through the session, and as we're either of us are off the speaking duties. So I'm sure that many of you are already familiar with Special Olympics, but I'm sure that many of you are not. So what we wanted to do was just to begin with to share a little bit about where the organization came from. So it was founded back in the 1960s, early 1960s, by Eunice Kennedy Shriver, who was the sister of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the former president of the United States. And they both had a sister, Rosemary, with an intellectual disability. And Eunice felt really strongly that sport was something that her sister was being excluded from and hadn't an opportunity to participate in, but something that she felt had a really powerful role to play in helping people with intellectual disabilities to be much more included in society. And so she founded a summer day camp for children with intellectual disabilities, which she hosted in her backyard, a large backyard, but her backyard nonetheless. And very quickly over a number of years, it grew, particularly in the US, and the first World Games took place in Soldiers Field in Chicago, 1968, with 26 US states and Canada participating, and 1,000 athletes. Now, the program has grown enormously since those days. And I'll share with you a little bit of that growth shortly. But what I wanted to do is just let you know about the central mission that the organization has. So there's a little bit of sound feedback there. I don't know if it's possible for anybody to mute themselves if they're not speaking.
I think it's Darlene. Darlene needs to mute herself.
Would it be possible for you to mute yourself?
I'm true.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much. So our mission as an organization is really quite simple. It's to provide year-round opportunities for people with intellectual disabilities to participate in sport. It's a long, wordy mission that you can see here on the screen, but there's a couple of key points that I wanted to draw your attention to. So I've really highlighted those in red. The first is that Special Olympics, contrary to what a lot of people have heard about the organization, it provides year-round sport training and competition. So many people have heard of the Special Olympics World Games, which is our largest flagship event. But actually, Special Olympics happens in communities all around the world every week, every night of the week, every day of the week, where children and adults with intellectual disabilities are training. And that's the second, I suppose, myth that I wanted to just dispel quickly, is that often people think of Special Olympics as a program that offers sport opportunities for children with intellectual disabilities. But actually, we cater for children and adults from the age of 2 up to whatever age they wish to continue to participate. So there is no upper age limit there. And we see sport as having huge power, both as we'll talk about quite a lot over the rest of the day, is power to affect inclusion and to impact social inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities. But more basically, sport is a wonderful way to develop fitness, to learn how to be courageous, to enjoy the love of sport that we all know very, very well. And this is probably the reason we're all here on this session today. But it's also about facing the challenges and the dealing with the successes and failures that sport offers. So really, it's sport as a very holistic development tool. So I mentioned that we've grown quite a lot since that first games in Soldiers Field in Chicago with 1,000 athletes. And we now have over 6.4 million athletes all around the world. 1.7 million of those are unified teammates. So I'm going to come back to that in a couple of minutes. And then we have over 500,000 coaches all around the world. Now, we're constantly working to recruit and train more coaches, and we're still not at the ideal number that we would like to have, but we are making great efforts to grow those numbers. And again, I'll share a little bit more with you. We've got probably the split that you would traditionally expect to see in sport, about a 60-40 split of male to female athletes. And as you can see in the pie in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, we have the same typical age trends that you would see in any sports organization. We have smaller numbers participating in the older age groups. So you see that large dark sector in the right-hand side of the screen, which is 22 plus, so covers almost all of adulthood, and it's a third of our participant numbers. So we're quite similar in profile to most other large sports organizations. One of the other areas that is often cause for confusion is how we differ from the Paralympics. And I'm sure many of you will be familiar with Paralympic sport, and we spoke a little bit earlier before the session started about the Rio Games. And obviously we're all very disappointed that the Games couldn't go ahead in Tokyo this year, but there is an awful lot of confusion at times between Special Olympics and Paralympics. So I wanted to draw your attention just to a couple of these fundamental differences. So the first is the primary impairment that athletes who participate in Paralympics and Special Olympics have. So typically in Paralympics, the athletes will have either a physical, a visual, or an intellectual impairment in a small number of sports. And in Special Olympics, all of the athletes, their primary impairment would be an intellectual disability. So you may see in Special Olympics athletes who have also got physical or visual impairments, but they are not their primary disability. In addition, the ability level of the athletes who are participating, Special Olympics offers opportunities for athletes of all ability levels to participate. And we have a particular structure and a particular system of competition that allows and facilitates the participation of athletes of all ability levels. While Paralympic sport obviously is very much elite sport, it's high performance sport, and it's a small minority of athletes who will reach that performance level to be eligible to participate. And then the final difference, and I'll explain this again a little bit more when we come to talking about classification systems, but the classification system that is used with Paralympic sport focuses predominantly on the impairment type and then the level of functional impairment. With Special Olympics, we focus purely on the competition performance level and ability level. So the type of disability is not considered. So that will mean that you may find that in a single competition, you may have athletes with, for example, Down syndrome, autism spectrum disorder, or Fragile X syndrome, all participating in one event together. And there are a couple of other areas, I won't go into too much detail on them, but there are a couple of other areas where the organizations differ, and specifically our relationship with the International Olympic Committee. So Paralympic sport is very much part of that Olympic family, while Special Olympics is simply recognized by the IOC. So back to Special Olympics and what we do. Here listed on the screen is all of our official Special Olympics sports. So as you can see, there's quite a wide offering there. And each of our programs at a national level, at a country level, and even at a local level within countries, has the opportunity to select which of those sports that they wish to participate in. In addition, we see a lot of locally popular sports. So a sport that may be very popular in one particular country, which might form a very key part of their sport program. So as an example, in Special Olympics Bharat, Kho-Kho and Kabaddi are both hugely popular sports within the program, but they don't appear on these lists because they are, in terms of our program, they happen exclusively within Special Olympics Bharat. But as you can see, it's quite a wide open program that offers opportunities for participation, whether an athlete prefers team sports, individual sports, strategy sports, striking sports. There's a range there on summer and winter sports also. So what is it that makes us really different? There's a couple of things, and the most fundamental of these is divisioning. And divisioning is what we call our classification system. So divisioning is, it's how we group our athletes to participate in fair and equitable competition. So there are two stages to this process of divisioning. So first happens actually before a competition. So as an athlete is entered into a competition, either themselves or by their coach, they will be required to submit an entry score. So that entry score could be, for example, in track races would be their time, their personal best time. In a sport like a racket sport or a team sport, it's often an individual athlete skill assessment or a team skill assessment, which gives a team or individual athlete a rating. And based upon either those times or their ratings or their entry scores, a distance, for example, in shot put, based on those entry scores, the athletes will be grouped preliminarily into groupings of athletes of approximately the same ability level. So the athletes are then, once they're in a similar ability level, they will then be divided additionally by gender and by age. So the idea behind this is that you will have a group of athletes of between, for example, the ages of 8 and 11, who are all female and all completing their event in approximately the same time, and they would compete together. And the idea behind this is that we provide a fair opportunity for athletes to compete in an event which is competitive, which gives them a reasonable opportunity to experience success, but is still providing good, strong, solid competition. And I think the general belief behind this is that it provides a much better sports experience for the athletes. So it's quite a complex process in many ways. It's simple in its basis. Athletes are divided by gender, by age, by ability, but the application of it can be a little bit tricky. And fortunately, we have expert competition teams who manage this process at the games. But fundamentally, it provides a much better competition experience for the athletes. The second thing that makes us quite different, and I know this is going to come up a lot more when Scott and Mike are speaking a little bit later, but is our Unified Sports program. So Unified Sports is a program that was created back in about 1989, if I'm correct. And essentially what Unified Sports does is it provides an opportunity for players and athletes with and without intellectual disabilities to train and play together as teammates on the same team. Okay, and the real beauty behind this is that this process of training together, of competing together, it builds friendships, and that further develops into opportunities for much better social inclusion. So if you think back to any of your experience as a child or a young adult playing sport, even as a grown adult playing sports, your teammates very, very quickly become your friends, and you start to spend time together, to hang out together outside of trainings and competition. And for many people I know who've played sports, some of the best friends you make in your life are through sports. And the idea of Unified Sports is to capitalize on that and use sport as a tool to create social inclusion and create the opportunities for those athletes without intellectual disabilities to be much more included in society at large, with intellectual disabilities to be included much more readily in society. And for those without intellectual disabilities to learn, as Mike will talk about a little bit later, that really actually we're not all that different. And then the final piece that I just want to touch on more generally is our World Games. So I mentioned earlier that our World Games is our flagship event. And I think this is absolutely true. Our games take place just like the Olympic or Paralympic Games. They take place every 2 years and alternate with summer and winter games. We do take place typically 1 year before the Olympic or Paralympic Games. So we had our last summer games in Abu Dhabi in 2019, our last winter games, 2017 in Austria. We were due to be heading into winter games next year, but as a result of a number of reasons, the games will now take place in early 2022. Our winter games in Kazan, Russia. And then our next summer games will take place back on the normal cycle of games in 2023 in Berlin. So we have a lot of exciting times ahead. What's really important to mention here though, is that while the World Games is our flagship event, and while it is sort of the banner event that probably most people touch upon first in Special Olympics. Only the tiniest minority of our athletes, our 6.4 million athletes around the world, will ever have an opportunity to compete at a World Games. And so the real magic and the real hard work and the real core of Special Olympics happens at a local community level. And it's with our local community coaches where most of this work takes place. So now that I've given you a little bit of an overview of Special Olympics, I wanted to talk just very briefly about some of the work that we do around educating and supporting our coaches. Because as I mentioned, we have 500,000 of those coaches around the world, and it's an ever-growing population that we want to support and recognize and thank for the work that they do. And some of the ways in which we are trying to support those are through resource development. So as an international organization with over 220 countries represented in our national programs, plus a program in every US state, we are a wide-ranging movement. And we try to create coaching resources that will be useful regardless of where you come from, regardless of language. We try to service multiple language requirements where possible. So for each sport, if you visit this website, resources.specialolympics.org, for each sport we'll find a sport-specific coaching guide, along with a range of more generic coaching resources. We're continually developing new tools, currently developing some short guidance on the use of small-sided games to support athlete development, and also guidance for coaches on planning their competition season and their training season to be ready for their culminating event at the end of the year. We're also doing some work at the moment in creating a more robust global coaching system, and we've been very fortunate to be accepted to participate in the International Council for Coaching Excellence and Nippon Sports Science University's Coaching System Development Program. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to not only access some of the brightest minds in coach development, but also to connect with a number of international sports federations, coaching organizations who are in the same position as us in aiming to develop a coach development system. So we're in the very early stages of that program, and it's been an incredible opportunity so far. We are very excited to be partnering with our Asia Pacific region in this program. And so we will be working specifically on creating a coaching system to roll out within the Asia Pacific region initially. We also work very closely with a number of sport federation partnerships. And so as you saw that sports list, there's a huge number of sports. I think we have 36 official Special Olympic sports. And so it would be unreasonable to expect that Special Olympics will be the expert in all of those sports. It's simply not possible. But we do recognize that those sport federation partners who we work with are the experts in those sports. And so we work very closely with them to try and make their training programs as available as possible to our own coaches, our own athletes. So for example, with the Badminton World Federation, we've had the opportunity to introduce a shuttle time program to many of our coaches around the world. With the International Tennis Federation, we've recently created a short e-learning module which lives on their academy, which is their online training portal, which introduces ITF coaches around the world to coaching players with intellectual disabilities. So that's a really nice opportunity for us to introduce ourselves as a movement to the global community of tennis coaches. And then finally, another brief example, we've worked really closely with the Michael Phelps Foundation, and we've used their really wonderful IM swim training program to act as a foundation for our sport-specific coaching guide for swimming, which we launched just 2 or 3 weeks back. So really exciting collaborations happening with a lot of our sports partners, and we really simply couldn't do our job without them. We've also created our online learning portal, which hosts learning which is free. Beg your pardon. It's free. The account is free. All courses are free. And most of our content is available in the public catalogue. So we would absolutely invite you to please go on, check this out. Please feel free to visit and take any of the courses that you find of interest. Our portal is available in, I think we have 9 different languages, and the courses are now available in multiple different languages as well. And they cover a range of topics from coaching to health and wellness, to safeguarding protective behaviors. We now have our global youth engagement team who are creating a whole load of fantastic resources around educating and empowering youth. And our US Unified Champion Schools, who I think Mike may talk about a little bit later, and I know Scott will. So online learning available in relation to Unified Champion Schools also. So wide range of content there. So I really wanted to share this video with you. This is, in fact, I'm going to let the video speak for itself first before I go any further.
All the way.
So that is one of my, hands down, I think one of my favorite moments from the last World Summer Games in Abu Dhabi. That was a shot taken by Special Olympics USA's Matthew Millett. And I'd love you just for 1 second, just to think about what you see when you look at that video. And some of the things that really jump out at me when I see that video, I see skill, I see athleticism, I see courage, I see tenacity to take that shot in the first place. I see confidence, but I also see humility. And to me, I see the example of a really rounded quality athlete when I see Matthew Millett take that shot. I don't know Matthew. I met him very briefly about 2 days before he took that shot. And I didn't know who he was. He just I happened to be walking down a corridor with a friend and who knew him, and they started talking. Extremely polite, unassuming, just lovely guy. But I came across this little piece from him from a few years prior to this. And it was something that that Matthew had outlined in terms of what he would expect to see from his coaches. So quite clear here, put me in a position to be successful and challenge me to help me realize my potential. Teach us teamwork, unselfish play. So I think in that example there, he knew it wasn't a selfish play at all. It wasn't a search for glory. He knew there was only a couple of seconds on the clock and there was an opportunity to try something. So I think really bore that out. Make playing and being part of a team fun and enjoyable. He looked to me like a man enjoying himself. Be open to change and know the rules of the sport. So these are thoughts coming directly from one of our athletes. And what struck me on this was I suppose it was coming directly from an athlete. This is what he wants from his coaches. This is not anybody in Special Olympics saying this is what you need to be as a coach. This is what you need to know as a coach. Very much getting it from him directly. And I wanted to just finish off here by introducing you to a couple of tools which I really like, which I think can support an inclusive approach to coaching. So perhaps some of you have seen this before. This is the inclusion spectrum from Ken Black and Pamela Stevenson. I think it's a really nice structure that can help a coach who is trying to figure out how can I make sure that I'm including everybody in the program that I'm offering. There's a really great video on this. If you see the link in the bottom corner of the screen, the iCoach Kids program, which is run by or led by Dr. Sergio Larabertial in Leeds Beckett University. It's a really good video on this on their YouTube channel, which I highly recommend checking out. But essentially it provides a framework and how you can ensure that all of your athletes are included. And so very briefly, open is where everybody can participate without modifications. So whatever it is that the task that you've set is something that suits the abilities of every single individual. The modified activities are activities where everybody plays together or participates together, but you might provide opportunities for athletes to participate in the way or with the equipment or in the way in which suits their ability levels. So you may have the opportunity to choose from a different size ball depending on the athlete's ball handling skills. You may use a variety of different zones where athletes may be allowed to walk or jog or push within specific zones according to their ability level, but everybody's still playing together. Parallel activities are your typical ability groupings where you group particular members of your class or your training group together based on their ability levels so that you are allowed to, or that you are able to tailor the coaching to specifically what their needs are. Separate is something that I think most people would recommend that this is not something that is a continual or an everyday occurrence, but that there are recognizing that there are times when, whether it's a child who has a disability or a child who is struggling to learn a particular element, that there may be times where it's appropriate to separate one or two or a small group of athletes from the main group to allow them to have the opportunity to practice and develop skills, which ultimately will allow them to reintegrate back into the same group. And then finally, disability sport in the centre. And it might sound strange to reference disability sport as an inclusive practice, but disability sport can be a great way to include all athletes of all ability levels. And some really simple examples of this could be with your whole class or your whole training group playing sitting volleyball. Not every athlete needs to be sitting on the ground to play volleyball, but if you have some athletes within your group who do require to be seated playing volleyball, the whole group can sit down. And all of a sudden you are operating this sort of reverse integration system where you are integrating the children without disabilities into disability sport rather than the other way around. And you'll see at the center of the tool here, we have STEP. So I'm just gonna finish off by introducing you to the STEP model. This is a model that I think is fantastic. It's very, very simple, and it provides you with a really nice framework for adapting your activities, your games, your classes to accommodate the needs of various individuals. And I think it's really important to recognize that these tools are really useful, not only for children with disabilities, but for including and managing mixed ability groups, regardless of whether the children have disabilities or not. So the STEP tool looks at 4 simple areas within your training or your activity and how you can modify those to facilitate inclusion of people with different abilities. So with space, you can modify it by using zones. Particular individuals are allowed to be in particular spaces. You can make the space bigger, smaller. You can change the surface that you play on. In terms of the task, you can change the rules of the game. Rules are made to be broken. Let's modify them in whatever way we need to allow our athletes to all be included. Obviously, we want to keep the essence of the game there, the essence of the sport, but we can be flexible around those. And simple things like allowing extra bounces. If anyone who's seen wheelchair tennis, 2 bounces are allowed. And so this is a simple modification that has facilitated hundreds and hundreds of thousands of individuals to participate happily in tennis. Equipment, simple one, changing the size, weight, color, texture of equipment. There's a lot of modified equipment that is available or that can be created to ensure that athletes are able to participate. And then finally, people. So you can adjust team sizes. Yes, a typical volleyball game is 6v6, but you can modify that if you need to, if that facilitates your athletes being fully included. Working in pairs. Using a buddy system where maybe you pair an athlete who needs additional support with a more competent performer who can help them out. You can also pair athletes up with with colleagues of similar ability. So there's a range of different ideas there. You may also see this, won't go through it in detail, but you may also see the tree model, which is essentially the same thing: teaching style, rules, environment, or equipment. So I'd urge you to take those and maybe think about a game or an activity that you do, that you use regularly, and think about how you might modify that. So how would you modify it if you have an individual in your group with an intellectual disability who finds it challenging to follow complex instructions? How might you change that game or activity? If you had a child who had sensory sensitivities, who maybe doesn't like loud noises, or maybe is sensitive to the textures or touches of particular pieces of equipment, how could you use steps or tree to make those adjustments? So in summary, just some final tips, which have come from many of our coaches over the years. Number one, know your athletes, meet them where they're at. You can't force learning on anybody. Give them time to explore their surroundings, get to know what they're currently capable of, and don't be afraid to challenge them. Be prepared to adapt. Things probably won't work exactly right the first time, and that's okay. You can really show your athletes that making mistakes and learning from them is a good thing. If you're open about experimenting, be patient. Above all else, be patient. Learning will happen, but it may take a little bit more time. I mentioned challenge earlier. Success is certainly important in providing people with the confidence to kind of take new steps and try new things, but also so is challenge. Success all the time gets boring really, really quickly. So don't be afraid to challenge your athletes. Make sure that you're catering for everybody's needs. Don't just go for the safe middle ground. Make sure that you're thinking about the athletes on the fringes at the higher and lower ability levels. Be concise and concrete in your communication. Try and avoid colloquial terms and jargon that might be confusing, like now I'm drawing a blank on one now. But check for understanding as well. Don't be afraid to ask your athletes to either explain or demonstrate back to you what you've just asked them to do. Make sure that they do understand. And so really, in short, it's just using the skills that you already have. Trust yourself that you have the teaching skills, you have the coaching skills, you have the knowledge. You just need to be confident to use it. And above all else, work with your athletes, talk with them, get to know them, and that will lead you certainly down a very good path. And so now I'm going to, a little bit late, I'm sorry, hand over to Scott. And Scott is going to talk you through Unified Champion Schools.
Great, thank you so much, Fiona. That was really wonderful, and way into our schools work, so you can jump right into it. So like Fiona said, we have Special Olympic sports happening all over the world, kind of year round, and our schools work is no different. So we're in schools all over. So we see over 140 different countries with unified sports involvement in schools. And that includes over 90,000 schools across Bharat in India. And so really, we have the range all the way across the world, but a lot of this is happening right here in India. And we're really lucky to partner with Special Olympics Bharat to be providing year-round opportunities on kind of throughout the country. So you can look more specifically whether Special Olympics is something that's currently in schools in your community, but it is really across the nation and across the world. Fiona, you can move forward. And so that's going to take a little bit of a different form depending on what kind of school you're teaching in, but the benefits are really the same across all schools. And so what we're seeing is for these students who are participating in unified schools, so that's schools with unified sports programs, we're seeing an increase in social inclusion. We are seeing fitness and equity through sport. We're seeing leadership development. We're seeing the whole school and the whole community really impacted by these changes. And so you might think, okay, sport, what's it going to do? But as Fiona mentioned, sport really has a transformative effect on an individual. And when you see kind of a group of individuals all coming together in the name of sport, that really shapes a community. And so for a lot of these communities, the first time that they have seen individuals with disabilities, and the first time that they've really seen capabilities of those people typically been excluded, that has a very transformative impact really on the entire school development. And so we look at Special Olympics Unified Schools as an opportunity not only to influence the students who are participating and to give them a sense of purpose and belonging, but also to change the school at large and eventually change the community and then the world. Fiona, you can move forward. So another thing that we really look at in Special Olympics Unified Schools is how to bring in sport and then build off of it into greater things. So we have two models that we look at. The first is kind of the more basic model, which is unified schools. And as I said, unified schools are just schools that have unified sports in them. So that's bringing together young people with and without intellectual disabilities to play together as teammates. And so they're all in the same field, they're playing the same game towards the same goal. And we see those same social impacts transfer over into the school. We then have kind of our more advanced model, which is the unified champion schools model. Now in unified champion schools, what you're gonna see is the unified sports as the base. From that, we're gonna use inclusive youth leadership, which is kind of a leadership program for young people with and without intellectual disabilities to join together to increase awareness, to work on fundraising, to work on advocacy, all towards the goal of eventually social inclusion. And so we have the inclusive youth leadership, the unified sports, and then that leads to whole school engagement. So like I said, it's getting the entire school involved. That could be through fans in the stands. So that could be students going to a sporting event. That could be through a spread the word inclusion rally. That could be through kind of a unified field day. Really any way that you can bring all of the students and all of the community together to witness what's happening in unified sports. So again, we've got the two models there. If you're a school that doesn't currently have really any inclusive programming, you might want to look more at unified schools. So see how you can bring a unified sports team to your school. If you already have kind of a more inclusive environment and you already see students with and without intellectual disability kind of interacting, working together, you might want to consider the Unified Champion Schools program, which again is going to be unified sports, and then those added components of inclusive youth leadership and whole school engagement. Fiona, you can keep moving there. Another important thing, if you're sitting today thinking, how can I bring this to my community? You know, maybe I don't have resources. The good news is that we are able to provide you with those resources. And so any need for equipment, any need for competitions, if you are worried about funding, we are lucky enough to be funded by the Stavros Niarchos Foundation in a project that is specifically for unified schools and unified champion schools. And so we have here on the map, you can see kind of we're spread all the way across the world, but in specific countries, we are supported by the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. And so we work with the local Special Olympics programs. So we work with Special Olympics Bharat in India, and we give them funding so that they can then give it to you, the educators, in order to implement these programs. And so if you are interested, definitely follow up. We have information on the Special Olympics website for how to get involved in Unified Champion Schools. But again, we shouldn't let kind of a dearth of resources impede you from being able to participate in unified schools and to bring inclusion to your schools. And another really awesome way that you're able to get involved as educators specifically is through unified physical education. And so we are lucky enough to have Mike Messerole joining us today, and he is going to talk us through kind of all of the ins and outs of unified physical education, which can be another low cost or almost free of charge kind of way to bring students together in your classroom specifically. So we have unified sports that really can change the school environment, but as it relates to your classroom, Mike is going to talk us through kind of those opportunities. So I'm going to pass the mic over, no pun intended, to Mike, and he's going to give us his presentation. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Scott. Let me jump over to my screen now. Let me see here. There we go. Okay, as we get started, so Scott, just give me a thumbs up if you can see the video here. All right, cool. So typically this video that I'm going to show is called Canadian Tire Wheels. It was a commercial put out by the during the last Paralympics by the Canadian, actually a tire company in Canada. Typically I end the presentations with this, but I thought I'd start this because I really want you to get an idea of, this is my vision of what inclusion looks like moving forward. And I think all communities would be fortunate if this were to happen in your community. So I'll show it and then we'll talk about it briefly.
Running through my thin gray hair. Though I don't have any plans tonight, I'm not going anywhere. Well, I should have seen this coming. Don't know why I'm surprised.
When the best of us steps up, our nation stands a little taller.
So as you can see, pretty emotional video. But the thing that amazes me the most about this video is that you had a group of children on their own just take on the responsibility of including somebody new in the neighborhood. Obviously, the game of basketball is supposed to be played 5-on-5 on your feet. But in this case, the children chose to make the modifications. And what I want you to think about as we kind of go through this talking about inclusion is, what modifications can I make in my class? What are some things that I can do with my students to make the learning environment a positive learning environment where students are encouraged? And I'm getting this a little bit later, but really a good learning environment is one where students are not afraid to fail. If we do everything right the first time, we never learn anything. So the goal is to challenge them to not always do things correct the first time. So with that, let's let me move forward here. So I want to kind of talk about here is you know, equality. If we're looking at inclusion, equality is, you know, the assumption that everyone benefits from the same support. They're treated equally. So if you look at this picture, you can see we've got 3 people watching a soccer game or football game, and 2 can see over the fence and 1 cannot. So while they're all being treated equal, 1 is not being included in this characterization. So what do we do? Well, I think to try to create.
I can still just see your YouTube screen.
Oh, my mistake. My mistake.
Apologies.
Thank you very much. How's that?
Great.
Is that, okay.
Perfect.
Let me go back here then. Let me go back to this other slide. So what I was referring to before is equality. And with this picture, you can see that we've got 3 individuals that are trying to watch a soccer game or football game, and 2 can see what's going on and 1 cannot. While they're all being treated equally, they all have the same height of box to stand on. One is definitely not being included. So we move to the equity piece of this, and that is that everybody gets the support they need, which is great. Now everybody can see, which is a step forward. But we still have the issue of what if we don't have the ability to have that individual have a second box to be able to see? What if we still have that barrier? And so then we get to this justice piece. And really what we're doing with the justice piece, and this is where we want to get with physical education, is we want to remove those systemic barriers that our students have. And those systemic barriers are ones that it could be a physical barrier. It could be barriers that the students place on themselves. So, what are some barriers that students place on themselves? If a student's told time and time again, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, well, pretty soon they start believing that there are certain things that they cannot do, whether they've ever tried them or not. And so those barriers that students put on themselves, it could be a barrier of a fear of failure. It could be a barrier that they fear embarrassment, that many of us do. So you have students that they will place some barriers on themselves. And then we have parents. Parents place barriers on their children. I know many parents that I work with here in the United States, their fear is that they don't want their children to be hurt. I don't think any parent wants their child to be hurt. And so they become very protective, and the child does not get the opportunity, whether it be a movement opportunity or a social opportunity, to participate in their communities, or participate with their typically developing peers, or participate with any peers for that matter. But I think the other big piece here is, what barriers do we as teachers, coaches, place on our students and athletes? Not that we do it intentionally, but maybe unintentionally, we're not thinking, we may not think through some things. So I think when the first time that I started coaching Special Olympics swimming, my first thought was, okay, I can't push them too hard. Many of them weren't in great shape, so I had to really pull back. And I did the same warm up for all my athletes. And then I realized that, they're all at different positions. They're all at different developmental stages. Some can swim for 15 minutes continuous already. So I need to, back to what Fiona said, I need to meet my athlete where they are. And so instead of placing these barriers on them, know my athlete, know where they're at, or know my student and know where they are, and then accommodate for where they are. And what I found over time is that philosophy of meeting the student or meeting the athlete where they're at, whether I'm coaching students with athletes with disabilities, or I'm coaching typically developing athletes, or if I'm coaching some elite athletes, it's the same philosophy throughout. You have to meet them where they are. So I don't know if you've seen this dynamic pattern theory, but really what it says is we've got three components for learning. You have the individual capabilities, and that is the stuff that students are bringing with them. It's their height, their weight, their cardiovascular endurance, their strength, their power, their flexibility, their cognition, their motor abilities. Or do they have any sensory loss? So they're bringing that into our gymnasium or our physical activity space. Then we have the task. In physical education, we have a lot of tasks. We have a lot of teaching that goes on. We have a lot of skills that we want to develop. So we look at the task demand. What is the speed accuracy requirements? Is it moving? Is it seated? Is it standing? What are the demands of the sport? What are the goals of the sport? And then we have the environmental constraints, and as Fiona talked about it, the type of lighting may have a impact on one of our students' behavior. If the lighting is not good and they have low vision, it could hurt their performance. If the lighting is so bright, or if we have somebody on the autism spectrum that there's too much stimulus coming in, that could have an impact on it. You know, what is it a stable environment? Is it a constantly moving environment? So we have all of these, this whole triangle that's going on. And as a teacher, let's face it, it's not easy to figure all of these things out. So what I want to look at is the task demands. The task demands we do have control over. That is the one thing that we as teachers, we as coaches can control. The individual capabilities, we might be able to assist our students and our athletes with some of that stuff. Obviously, you can't coach height, you can't teach height, but through physical activity and nutrition, we may be able to help them with their weight. Through physical activity, we might be able to help them with their cardiovascular endurance and their physical strength and their flexibility. Through practice, we might be able to help them with their motor abilities. So there are things that, while they're bringing these capabilities with them, there are some things there that we have the potential to impact. And the environmental constraints, we may have some control over that, but let's face it, when we're outside, we have the lighting that we have the space that we have, whether it be grass or dirt or asphalt or cement. We may not be able to control all of those aspects with regard to the environment. So the question is, how do we create an inclusive environment where all students succeed? And Fiona gave some excellent examples with the inclusion spectrum and the STEP program. I think those are great points. Very well. I encourage you to utilize that thinking as you think through tasks and that type of thing. But ultimately, we need to create an environment where students are not afraid to fail. If you as a teacher and you as a coach, if you create an environment where students are not afraid to fail, which means they don't feel that they're going to be embarrassed, they don't feel that they're going to be ridiculed, you will have a very successful learning environment, because it becomes a positive learning environment where students are willing to try new things, where they're willing to possibly fail more often than normal, that the frustration level may not get as high, because they know that the expectation is that my coach, my teacher is challenging me and giving me the freedom to try things. And if it doesn't work out, figure out a way to make it work out. So we kind of go back to those, the task thing, the task demands. Can we make changes? Can we modify the equipment? Can we modify the rules? Can we modify the playing area, the number of players? All of those things that can help us create this positive learning environment. Because what are we doing? We're meeting the students, we're meeting the athletes where they are. So that brings us into unified physical education. And this is a unique thing about unified physical education. First of all, unified physical education is bringing kids with and without disabilities together to really to learn in a physical activity setting. It's structured around, like in the United States, it's structured around our national physical education standards and grade level outcomes. And the other unique thing is which I think all good physical education courses or classes should do, it helps develop leadership skills for all students. And the uniqueness of this is it empowers all students to accept inclusion, to take that inclusive practice within physical education and see it sprout and spring out and start including other areas of the school community. So it may start in physical education, it may start with unified sports. And then what we start seeing are these students that have disabilities are all of a sudden, they've got a different friend group. They're being accepted. One thing I've learned over the last 6 years of working with Unified Physical Education and Unified Champion Schools is that one idea really sprouts into multiple ideas. You know, you have a seed, the seed, you water the seed, it comes up, and the plant comes up initially, and then it starts sprouting flowers, it starts sprouting more ideas, more ways that things can be included. So it's not just in a silo. These things may start in a silo, but really expand out to all areas of education. So you know, it is a fully inclusive academic course, and I do know, like in the United States, we have many schools who they're completely inclusive, meaning kids with and without disabilities are educated together. But what that looks like really differs from school district to school district, state to state. Some are very inclusive, and you wouldn't be able to tell which kids have disabilities and which kids don't with regard to the courses that they're in and the things that go on in the class. And other schools, they're more self-contained, and so there may not be as much inclusion. They're being taught in the same school, but they're in kind of a different part of the school. And then we do have some places where we have specialized schools for children with disabilities. So what those schools are doing, the ones that have specialized schools for this unified physical education, is they're partnering with another school, and those two schools work together to create some inclusive practices, bringing kids from both schools together to participate in physical education activities or participate in unified sports. The unique thing about unified physical education, the important thing, is that all students enter the class on equitable social footing. So they're all treated as equals. At times, we see, at least in the United States, we'll have typically developing students that will come into adapted physical education and assist and kind of be a peer helper. That's not the purpose of unified P, because if you have a peer helper, then we have a hierarchy. I'm your helper, I'm here to help you, not we're here to learn together. And really the concept is we're here to learn together. The other thing is the instruction is intentional, provide opportunities for all students. And really this is truly physical education. That's our goal, isn't it? Provide opportunities for all students to enhance their motor, cognitive, and social skills. That's the goal of physical education, whether it be adaptive physical education, unified physical education, or just traditional physical education. And in the United States, we want all students to receive physical education credit. So a couple of things. Sharing the same space is not inclusion. Just because you have two groups of students in the gym at the same time, that is not inclusion. Inclusion is about building a community of learners. So, you know, it's about sharing everything. I have been in schools where they have an adapted physical education class, and that's taking part in one part of the gym. And then we have the traditional physical education that's taking part in another part of the gym. And they feel that it's inclusion because the two students see each other doing different things. That is not inclusion. They're sharing the same space, but there is no interaction between the two groups. They're not even being taught by the same instructor or even doing the same activities. As Fiona mentioned, you really need to be willing to modify and adapt lessons and activities to ensure that every student learns and achieves their success. Fiona mentioned two things. One is that meet the student where they are, which means we may have to modify the lessons or modify the equipment. And the other thing that she mentioned is that you have to be patient and you have to be flexible. Even if we look at a typical class, typically developing peers, that's not a homogeneous group. You have a variety of abilities in there. Good teaching is good teaching, whether you have kids with disabilities or whether you don't, because you're still meeting the students where they are. You know, if I'm teaching a class of 25 students, I might have 10 different ability groups if I had to group them based on the experiences that they're bringing in, and based on the abilities and the capabilities that they're bringing in. The other key thing is that you see the abilities of all students that can contribute to the whole class. And sometimes, even in our traditional physical education classes, we we may gravitate toward the elite group, or we may gravitate toward that middle group. And many times we kind of forget about the lower performing group. And so we really need to make sure that that we want to include every student, regardless of their ability level, into the physical education class. So the outcomes, the things that we've seen occurring with this unified physical education class, and this is the part that really excites me. I've been fortunate to be go all over the United States and meet with teachers and students. And even our research is showing that increased physical activity levels of all students in the classes. So what they're seeing is that, the belief was, well, if I have a unified physical education program and I bring my typically developing peers into it, it's going to slow everything down, and my typically developing peers are not going to get the amount of physical activity that they do when they're with the kids with disabilities. But what we find is that is actually kind of a fallacy. We see that there is more effort because they want to be good role models. We see that there's more encouragement by both groups. So the activity level actually increases in many instances. We do see an increase in acceptance of individual differences, not just within the physical education class, but also within the school. The interesting thing is, as I talked with students who have been in the unified physical education class, their perception of their peers changes. They start looking at individuals' abilities as opposed to their differences. They stop looking at skin color and they look at what abilities do they have. They stop looking at a disability and look at what abilities do they bring. They really look at how we are more alike. They're not looking at the differences or looking at the similarities. And I think that is huge in this day and age with things that are going on. If you can develop a community that is accepting of others' differences, what a strong community we've made, whether it be our community in our physical education class, or the community within the school, or the community as a whole outside the school. We have seen that this whole school engagement, whether it be with unified physical education or unified sports or other things that go on with unified champion schools, have improved the positive climate throughout the school. We've also seen an increased feeling of worth in students with disabilities. And I will say that I have seen an increase in self-worth in students without disabilities who are in the unified physical education class as well, who are the typically developing peers in there. They have found more self-worth in what they do and how they act and how they interact with their peers. And then obviously new friendships are created that go beyond the school day. In the United States, it's not uncommon that kids with disabilities really don't have much social interaction outside of school, with the exception of Special Olympics, with the exception of within schools that are doing unified physical education and unified sports and other inclusive practices. All of a sudden their friend group has expanded and now they're being included in activities outside of school, whether it be birthday parties or sleepovers or going to the movies or going out for dinner or whatever the group wants to do. So in conclusion, really a successful physical education program is when all students are fully engaged in meaningful activities, sharing equally and learning together. And the only way this occurs is if the environment is set up that it is such a positive environment that students are not afraid to fail. So with that, I think we do have time for a few questions. I will take off my share here. And I think we have some Q&As.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mike, Fiona, and Scott. So we will take a few questions. And I just start with one. Now, one of the questions asked by Shruti is, how does Special Olympics benefit our community? Is one of the questions raised by one of the participants. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yep, I can hear you.
Any one of you, please
So-
kindly.
So I'm gonna let Fiona or Scott talk about that, because I think they actually have the data to back up how communities are impacted from Special Olympics. So I will mute myself.
Oh, I don't have data right now. Scott may be able to share some. I don't have any to hand, but I can certainly bring it back to you. But I think, you know, we see that to a lot of the stuff that Mike's talked about, that that communities become more inclusive. They become more able to recognize the value that people with intellectual disabilities can bring to the community. The individuals with intellectual disabilities themselves, they're learning the confidence and the skills through sport and through other programs that they are participating in. They learn their own capabilities and that they have a role to play in society and in their local community, and they have the confidence in themselves to put themselves out there and not, to your point, Mike, to not be afraid of not making everything perfectly the first time, of learning from their mistakes and their failures, and them not being a bad thing. And I think there are other elements then of our program. We didn't really talk a whole lot about it today, but we have a hugely comprehensive health screening program, which provides the opportunity for athletes within the program to be screened for their eye health, ear health, dental health, fitness, I think podiatry, and also mental wellness and well-being. And so there are a lot of range of programs that provide, I suppose, healthcare supports to athletes. I'll bounce over to Scott, because Scott, you may have some, I'm not sure if you do have data to hand, but particularly around the Unified Schools programming.
For sure. So a lot of the data that we have is focused on the students and the teachers. And so we've seen a lot of really important attitude shifts. And so when you ask students whether they think that they could be friends with a peer with a disability, we see before involvement with Special Olympics that number tends to be low. And then we see afterwards, and specifically in India, we saw it was 70 students that we interviewed after participating, so that they could see themselves being friends with someone. And so in terms of a community impact, when you see that level of friendship and you see that level of change, I think that's what shifts.
Oh, thank you. During this COVID, there's another question. How would you give activities for children with the special needs during COVID?
So I think I'll feel. Oh, sorry, Mike. Feel free to go ahead if you like, Mike.
I was just going to say that some of the things that we've done in the state of Nebraska with Special Olympics Nebraska is and with our university, we've created exercise videos that we share with our athletes to try to keep them moving. I'll be honest, with my team, I've had to do some Zoom meetings to keep them engaged. It is not easy. If you think about just the complexity of us even doing this session, and now you have the complexity that some athletes don't have technology, don't know how to use technology. And so we've kind of tried a little bit of everything. Sometimes it is going to their location and having a conversation at a distance with masks on, just to say hi, to keep them engaged and encourage them to be active, and maybe doing some exercises with them. Others, we have done some similar to this, where some online learning, where we have kind of a Zoom hookup and we're able to chat and stay engaged. And one of my coaches or myself will lead some activities that way. With regard to in schools, it has been very difficult for our physical education teachers, especially those doing unified PE or adaptive physical education. They have had some challenges of engaging those students via Zoom or Teams or whatever the platform that they are using. there are those who are really engaged, and then kind of like our students in person, there are some that are not so engaged.
I think there's still doubt with regard to the Special Olympics and Paralympics. Still there is, and unified sports. I think there's still a number of them are finding it a bit difficult. They confused about this. So maybe in a
Yeah.
way, how could you?
So yeah, I think and I think don't be too concerned about it. It's something that really commonly we experience, and I've worked on both the Special Olympics and Paralympic side of things, and the confusion happens both ways. So I think the two fundamental differences to remember. One is that in Paralympic sport, the athletes are elite, high-performing sports. They are the best, or high-performing athletes. They are the best of the best in terms of their athletic performance in their sport or in their classification within their sport. In Special Olympics, we provide opportunities for athletes of all ability levels. So I always use the example of a 100-meter race, for example. If you go to a Special Olympics competition, you will see 100-meter races on the track where athletes take maybe 13, 14 seconds to run 100 meters. And then you'll see races where athletes take 30, 40 plus seconds to run a race. So there will be very many different races at 100 meters. You may have 20, 30 different races at 100 meters. All ability levels are included. The second fundamental difference is that every athlete that participates in Special Olympics, with the exception of unified partners, every other athlete will have an intellectual disability, and that is their primary disability. In Paralympic sport, there are a range of different disability types that are accommodated within the sport. So athletes with physical impairments, they may be limb absences, they may have cerebral palsy. You'll have athletes with visual impairments, usually several classifications within each sport. And then in a very small number of sports, they have now reintroduced a classification for athletes with intellectual disabilities. But again, the important thing to remember there is those athletes with intellectual disabilities in those few classifications in athletics, swimming, table tennis, they are still elite, high-performing athletes. So they would, in most cases, be approaching full-time athletes, if not full-time training in their sport. Does that help?
Yeah. And thank you. Another thing is most of them are group of PE teachers and coaches. So do you think some of them could take up some courses so that they could also, there are many of them who are really good, who are passionate, but they may not have a guidance how to get about this field because there's immense scope in this. So do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think there are two things to start with, and certainly Mike and Scott, if you have something to jump in with here, please by all means do. The first thing to say is we always recommend, if anybody is interested in learning more, to contact the local program. So I will put in the chat, I'll put the website contact details for Special Olympics Bharat, and I highly recommend you connect with them because they will always have local opportunities that are available. So that would be the first port of call. And then the second is that we have a number of online courses that are available on our learning portal. So again, I will pop the address in the chat box, but it's learn.specialolympics.org, and you can create an account, which is free. And there are a number of courses there at the moment that are publicly available for coaches to learn more about intellectual disability. Some of the work that Mike's been talking about will we hope in time, hopefully will be available through the portal. Hopefully we can tap into loads of his expertise. But there's a range of opportunities there, and we will continually be adding there.
Thank you so much. It was indeed a wonderful session, a real opening, and I know there's ample opportunities, and our PE teachers are really talented, but the only thing is they need a guidance how to go about doing it, because we have PE teachers from across the country too. And you've seen around 1,700 PE teachers attending this session. And now moving on to a panelist, we have a very distinguished panelist today with us, Ms. Tiffany Brar. Tiffany, are you there? Tiffany, can you hear me? Tiffany, can you hear me? I think we'll show her videos and then I just read for her. Tiffany Brar was vision impaired and founder of Jyotirgamaya Foundation, Trivandrum, has become the winner of the Holman Prize 2020 from the Lighthouse for the Blind USA. She's the first Indian to receive the Holman Prize. The award is given to 3 individuals to explore the world and push their limits. 29-year-old Tiffany has walked away with $25,000 US dollars. So that's great prize money. I'm reading the what's come in the print media, and her ambitious ideas that will push her further to more challenges and shatter misconceptions of blindness around the world. The award was also given to, along with Jyotirgama team of special educators, she also will be closely working with local leaders and government workers to expand services for the blind into rural and tribal communities in South India. She's the only daughter of the retired General T.P.S. Brar and late Leslie Brar. Tiffany grew up in the capital city since 1995 when her father was serving as a brigadier in the military camp. Though Tiffany was born blind, that did not deter her vision and mission towards leading a normal life. She has come up with the novel scheme of launching a mobile visually impaired school, Jyotirgamaya, after her leadership training at Kantari run by the German lady Sabrea Tenberken and a Dutch partner, Tol Kronbeck at Berlin here. Tiffany is running Jyotirgamaya Foundation, where several visually impaired students are provided training on becoming self-reliant, which has been running on very meager resources. So Tiffany, indeed, we are honored to have you. Congratulations for this award. And before we start this, we'd like to show the video. So the video, please. The same video, we'd like to see you. Yeah. Voicing. Finish. Finish. Voice is not there.
Skydive Spa.
Okay, make some big smiles. Yes, we're ready. And you tie the mask just. Okay? Good. Okay. Jump. Okay, that's gonna be nice. Have a big smile and put your two thumbs in the air. The thumbs in the air. Yeah!
And two like a victory. Two fingers like a victory. Yeah!
Yeah!
Ma'am Tiffany. Yeah, it was nice. We saw you having this. I don't think even we could have this. Have this opportunity. It was indeed wonderful. So now over to you, Tiffany.
So, according to, I think I know most of you. I know Fiona Scott. I heard you last time, and I was with you on the panel from Ireland. And also, I know Usha ma'am. And for those who don't know me, yes, I think you know me a bit now from this video and the crazy things I did. But yes, as a woman with a disability, it's a big no-no in our lives, especially here in India, that a woman being blind can do this kind of adventure sports or Olympics. When we used to run in our 6th standard in the blind school in Kalimpong, we had to hold a rope and run. It was called guide running or rope running. We even have guide running where we hold the hands of a sighted partner and we run. But it's still not technically, we're still not doing it by ourselves. And everyone says, wow, you're so inspirational, you're so this, you're so that. But we as people with disabilities also get tired of hearing this fact that, oh, you did this, you did that, because we are not actually bringing the message across. But if we are allowed, if the ground is accessible and we are just given a place, okay, run from here to here, then we are actually doing it. But if a sighted partner is helping us run, it's no big deal. It's not something that we are really doing to inspire someone. But even a car rally, which is being done in certain places, it's being done with a person without a disability and with a disability. So that is not inspiring because the other person is doing the hard work. So we should learn how to do things for ourselves. And if we have to do that, the society should be made accessible. I'm not saying a blind person can drive a car, no, but maybe a blind person can learn how to read a map or Google navigate or do something. And a person who is physically challenged can drive that car or something like that, so that people with disabilities are there doing it. Once I enacted a scene, it was a small scene in a play where actually a person in a wheelchair wanted to get on the stage and said, I want to get on the stage, but my wheelchair can't go. There's no ramp. So I, as a blind person, was supposed to bring a wooden plank and place it there as a ramp. And then the person with the wheelchair was brought onto the stage. In fact, I pushed him. So that's how we people with disabilities can make a difference. Only if we come out and we actually prove that we are doing something, but not that someone else does it and we get the credit. I mean, that's also why people don't like people with disabilities, because there are 3 models: the charity model, the medical model, and the social model. So charity is like, okay, let's do everything for them. And the social model is like the society is not adapted. And the a medical model, I would say, is that we as people with disabilities are just looked upon as, okay, curable, or yeah, he's diagnosed with this. Yes, but we should be looked upon as taxpayers, people who can learn how to do things for themselves in an accessible environment, and that we need help so we can do all these things, all this skydiving and tandem. Yes, or skydiving, we do need help. Even a non-disabled person needs a help. So I found it as an exhilarating experience. I didn't do it to inspire anyone, but I did it to have the experience of flying from 4,000 feet high. I did it so that another woman with a blindness can do it. Not for the reason that, oh, I've done this and I'm great. No, but for someone else to say, okay, this is accessible. She can do it. I too can.
Yeah, it was indeed, Tiffany, you're a real role model. You're the ambassador, because it's not right. I'm not just trying to tell you, because you came out with, you were narrating your experiences, like how you travel all alone. She travels all alone. And she's sponsoring children who are normal. See, that itself is a big thing. And I saw you in one of the shows, in a Malayalam show, Kada Illa Jeevitham. Like in one of the
Yeah, that
programs.
was actually
Yes.
a show for someone. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had done it for someone. Yeah.
I really liked the message, because she was trying to speak out for another girl who became blind later.
Yeah.
So I heard Tiffany telling, see, I am blind, I'm taking a courage, but you knew the world earlier. I think it's so inspiring. Since then, I was very keen in meeting Tiffany. But I think you are a real, I think you, with your vision, definitely, I'm sure there'll be no one left behind. And I'm sure you're doing a lot. But I think we had to do a little bit in the sporting arena with that of the blind too. For that, maybe you can tell us, and we can definitely look forward to that. Thank you so much, Tiffany. It was wonderful having you. And with so many awards, Nightingale, with so many awards, I don't think there is anything. I think because you speak so many languages. For you, there is nothing in terms of a barrier. A normal person, definitely, we all would have a lot of barriers. But I think for you, you have gone across everything. And you have proved to the world there is no limit for it. So I think you have much more visibility than what we have. That's what it is. So thank you, Tiffany, for your valuable presence and for inspiring talk, because I definitely wanted our teachers and everybody sitting over here. Even we have a lot of international speakers. We had Rosa today. Rosa, I've not seen her. She's the president of the International Federation Association for Women and Sports. And also we had, I know Mike, you already meant Scott was there. So I think
Yes.
you're known across the world now, and definitely we look forward so that there'll be no one left behind. That's what the message is. And then Fiona, you've had a very dynamic person here. And with Mike and Scott, definitely, I think things are going. You're going to spread your wings, not just to special, but you're going to make it further. That's what is required. So Tiffany, thank you so much. And we also have, among UPI teachers, there's Mr. Nikhilesh Sharma, who is a physical education teacher and also a wheelchair basketball international medalist coach 2 times for the Indian basketball team. Nikhilesh, we brought you as a panelist. Can you just speak, please? Nikhilesh, can you hear me? Nikhilesh? I tried bringing you on the, yes, Nikhilesh, yes. Nikhilesh, warm welcome. He's one of our participants. Nikhilesh, welcome to the session. And I was just trying to see the chat box. Could you just narrate your experience too? We can't hear you, Nikhilesh. We can't hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, yes.
Hello, I am wheelchair basketball international coach, ma'am. 2 times Indian team, 1 time in Indonesia is bronze medalist, and next Thailand, 2 times. Our फेडरेशन इज व्हीलचेयर बास्केटबॉल फेडरेशन ऑफ इंडिया. तो मैं इस फील्ड में ही काम कर, मैं फॉर्मर बास्केटबॉल प्लेयर रहा हूँ और बास्केटबॉल फेडरेशन ऑफ इंडिया का नेशनल रेफरी रहा हूँ, और साथ में मैं SGF हाई स्कूल्स गेम फेडरेशन ऑफ इंडिया में स्टेट टीम का कोच रहता हूँ. और नाउ प्रेजेंटली आई एम ए फिजिकल एजुकेशन टीचर इन CBSE स्कूल भिलाई छत्तीसगढ़.
थैंक यू.
थैंक यू सो मच मैम. मैडम क्या मैं हिंदी में बात कर सकता हूँ?
आप हिंदी में बोलिए.
मैडम मैं चाहता हूँ कि ये जो स्पेशल केस में जो बच्चे होते हैं, मैं इनका डेवलपमेंट चाहता हूँ, क्योंकि मैं छत्तीसगढ़ पूरा कवर करता हूँ अपने स्टेट को व्हीलचेयर बास्केटबॉल. तो मैं ये चाहता हूँ कि जो व्हीलचेयर बास्केटबॉल प्लेयर काफी अच्छा स्कोप है. जैसे हमारी प्रेसिडेंट है माधवी लता मैडम, शी इज ऑल्सो इन स्पेशल, मैंने दिव्यांग है मैडम भी. तो मैं ये चाहता हूँ कि वो बहुत अच्छा काम, कल्याणी राजा रमन मैडम है हमारी सेक्रेटरी जनरल है, तो ये बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं पूरे इंडिया में डिसेबिलिटीज को लेके. और मैं ये गवर्नमेंट और खेलो इंडिया और साइंस से मैं ये मेरी कोशिश रहेगी कि ये खेलों को भी अडॉप्ट कर स्कूलों में कंपलसरी करा जाए, और ऐसे कोचोस को भी मतलब इंस्टीट्यूट में अलग से ट्रेनिंग दे या साई में अडॉप्ट करा जाए गेम को. तो ये काफी अच्छा स्कोप है. मैं काफी दिन से ऐसे मतलब मैं ऐसे प्रोग्राम में, आपके बहुत अच्छा ये प्लेटफॉर्म है आप लोग से बात करने का. मैं हर सेशन अटेंड करता हूँ जितना पॉसिबल हो पाए, क्योंकि अभी ऑनलाइन हमारी क्लासेस चल रही है तो पॉसिबल नहीं होता, फिर भी हम अटेंड कर रहे हैं. क्योंकि मैं ऑलरेडी जी मैं पी टीचर हूँ, तो स्कूल के भी अभी ऑनलाइन पूरा वो चल रहा है सेशन।
Thank
तो
you.
मैं बस यही चाहूंगा आप लोग से कि, और मैं लास्ट टाइम में LNIP आया भी था, मैं आपका ऑल इंडिया यूनिवर्सिटी का मैं वुमेन्स टीम का कोच रहा था, तो झांझर सर से भी मिला। जैसे आज मैंने डे का मैं जो सेशन होता मैं अटेंड किया, उसमें वो सर से भी मैं मिला। तो मैं दोनों सेशन अटेंड करता हूँ, एक आपका 11 वाला और इवनिंग वाला जो फॉरेन सेशन है। तो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है देख के कि काफी अच्छा। और अभी ये जो स्पोर्ट्स का बूम आया तो बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है। एक्चुअली क्या था, पहले हम लोग मैडम फिजिकल एजुकेशन एक पीटीआई के रूप में जानते थे, लेकिन अभी जो मोदी जी ने गवर्नमेंट खेलो इंडिया, फिट इंडिया एंड सीबीएसई के जो इतना अच्छा प्लेटफॉर्म मिल रहा है, इससे आप लोग और सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं। तो मैं एक काफी अच्छा एक फिजिकल एजुकेशन का बूम आ रहा है। पहले से भी ये समझते थे लोग कि अच्छा पीटीआई हो, स्कूल में सिर्फ पीटीआई सोचते थे, लेकिन आज एक सब्जेक्ट है फिजिकल एजुकेशन जो काफी अच्छा। तो बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है मैडम ये सेशन में अटेंड करके भी। और मैं आप लोग से यही चाहता हूँ कि सारे सीबीएसई या फिर प्राइवेट जो भी आईसीसी बोर्ड में, कि फिजिकल एजुकेशन के साथ में डिसेबिलिटीज को लेके भी कुछ थोड़ा सा स्कोप आ जाए तो अच्छा रहेगा। हम लोग तो ऑलरेडी कोच है, लेकिन हम लोग का जॉब, मैं एज ए फिजिकल एजुकेशन टीचर ही हूँ, लेकिन मैं साथ में ये भी करता हूँ।
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
जी
you,
मैम।
Niklesh. And
जी
for the information of the panelist, Niklesh is a physical education teacher. He works with the wheelchair basketball team. He wants that there should be an inclusion where all the others, along with the other sports, we also should have an inclusive, that is unified sports to be included. So definitely, Niklesh, हम आपका देखेंगे, आप लिखिएगा, we'll try taking it. Thank you, Niklesh. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Professor Rosa, for your remarks, please.
Yes, well, it was indeed a pleasure to listen to all the speakers today. I mean, it has been wonderful. I want to say to Fiona, to Mike, and to Scott that the work that you are doing is great, and I'm so pleased that it's in your webpage. People can download it free, and it's in several languages, so it's fantastic. And even for those who wants maybe to translate those, it's an idea in other languages, so they can also support and give you the material, because I believe one of the biggest problems we have is that still in many training programs, we don't have any subject that is related with people of sport and disability. So, and it happens worldwide. I mean, in many programs for PE and coaches, at university level or higher institution, there's no information for that. So thank you very much, because then it is available in there. Perhaps one of the biggest challenge it is to make a physical education class available to all kids. I mean, that's a challenge, because inclusion means that kids have access to physical education and that parents don't need to pay physical education extra, because in some countries still that's the case. I mean, physical education is in the syllabus, but parents have to pay for that. So if those who can't afford, so they have no access to physical education, so we can't do anything else to support much more. So that's also a reality. So maybe that's a challenge, and we as organization, that's why we push to make physical education there being in the program, and that the countries, governments who have signed agreements with UNESCO fulfill that compromise. And on the other hand, about Tiffany, thank you so much for all the information you provided. And exactly as Dr. Usha said, you have more vision than many of us who can see. And this is a unique talent. And I think everybody does have potential. So we just need to explore and make them feel that they can do many things to provide service, first of all, to develop themselves as human beings, and then to provide service. And for our friend from the wheelchair, basketball wheelchair, there are examples. And I think in this second batch course, we have seen many examples, even wheelchair dancing. So there are many examples in there that we can grab. And by doing this sort of activity, we bring knowledge to a bigger audience, so they can really be engaged in many different things. So there is no limit. The limit is just established by us, by ourselves. And we as organization keep on pushing for those who can make the change and really provide a platform. And when I said that is a physical education class, that is for everybody without distinction, and that parents don't have to pay for a physical education teacher in order for their kids to have it at school. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you, Rosa. Professor Luisa Veres, please. You need to unmute. You need to unmute.
Yes, thank you. No, thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed your presentation and what you share. I have a new statement this year, and it's that the solution is in the problem, and you bring to the forefront what society has considered a problem, but it's really not a problem. It is a solution. It is a component of value for society that has been untapped, that we haven't really taken full advantage of. So to hear other people really bringing it to the forefront of the conversation, investing their careers, investing their time, and then seeing athletes and just for recreational purposes, people with disabilities involved really brings empowerment to the forefront for those who have challenges, physical challenges. So thank you, and anything I can do to continue and to extend your voice and your research. I say present, I am here. Big proponent of people with disabilities, and their participation is of value to our community. So thank you for what you have done.
Thank you, Liz. Fiona, for your message, please, because just a minute, we would like to hear to you again, Fiona. Fiona?
Hi. Yeah, no, I'm here. No, I mean, I think just a big thank you, Dr. Usha, to you for giving us the opportunity to share a little bit about Special Olympics and about our movement, and I suppose share a little bit of our passion for inclusive sport. I think it's particularly, Mike, I think you spoke a lot to the value that inclusive sport brings, not just to people with disabilities, but also to people without disabilities. And as you say, Louisa, the problem is the solution. I love that. I'm definitely going to use that. But I think it's really nice, and it's really, you know, I think what we're trying to do as a movement in Special Olympics is to change attitudes and change mindsets. And I think we have some good work done, and we have lots of work yet to do. But I think it's wonderful to have communities like this community here, Dr. Usha, just embracing it and welcoming us in. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Dr. Scott. Yeah.
Yeah, just, I mean, really, Fiona said it great, but it's really a wonderful opportunity, and I'm excited. Everyone who's on the call today should be able to start a unified school at their school. You know, we have the tools there, and we want to make sure that it's possible. So definitely be proactive, be reaching out, and see how you can bring inclusion to your communities.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Mike, please.
Well, first, Dr. Usha, I want to thank you for allowing us all to talk to your group of teachers, but I'm really impressed with the variety of speakers that you bring in to help educate the physical education teachers in your country. That's really, really impressive. I would say we've talked about a lot of things today, and it can become overwhelming. So if you're a teacher that wants to try something, choose one thing and give it a shot. Take one idea you gained, or one activity, or one modification, and just start there and then build from there. So thank you for having us. I greatly appreciate it. And it was nice meeting many of you.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. Now we have our principal, Dr. G. Kishore, who is the principal of our college, that is Lakshmi National College of Physical Education. He's also the regional director for the Sports Authority of India for the Southern region. So please.
Thank you, Dr. Usha. It was a wonderful presentation. I place on record our appreciation to Ms. Fiona, Mr. Scott, and Mr. Michael, and all those who have contributed. I think this would have definitely enlightened our physical education teachers and community coaches to ensure and to do justice to our especially Special Olympics, those who are challenged, and the category of people who require special help. I think also our physical education and community coaching program, now with your inputs, we could do equality, equity, and justice. I think our program would not have been fully comprehensive and unless your participation. I think your participation has done justice to our entire course because we have taken care of the uh, the 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 special Olympic category of children also. So that is justice done to this in India to this community also. So I place on record our appreciation, and also I would like to mention we had made some effort also in this direction. Our faculty is in constant touch with the Special Olympics Bharat team in India and especially in Kerala. We had many initiatives taken. Our faculty, led by Dr. Usha, is constantly in touch with the, the schools which are here in Kerala to give assistance to them and whenever it is required. We had a special program also. Dr. Usha, have you briefed about the program which we did it with the host that with Father Felix?
I mentioned.
That was a good initiative. Where what was that called? Can you just explain that?
So the Father Felix was the therapeutic horseback riding. We had a workshop on therapeutic horse riding for those with the mental retarded children. We had trainers for that. Then Ms. Swasti, we had a program where our students took in various classes for these children with this intellectual disability. And also, sir, could you just show the video of the in Guinness Book of Record?
No, I will show. But who were the people who took that horse?
So she was from Austria, sir. I don't remember the name. The expert was from Austria on therapeutic horseback riding.
So this is, I think, some very, very inclusive exercise designs, which is specially meant for this category, which we could do in India. And that has got a lot of attention amongst this category of people. So, and also we had a special venture known as Ekta, Special Olympics held in our institution from, it was done in 2018, 11 to 14 January. This is the largest gathering of mentally challenged athletes in the world, which was held from 11 to 14 January, and the event was included with 15,000 special athletes and 10,000 volunteers and trainers. So it was a collection of 25,000 at our campus, and the participants were from 294 special schools and from 14 districts of the state, Kerala. I would like to show you a few glimpses of that. I would like to mention that the athletes, volunteers, and trainees presented the Guinness World Record for forming the largest human image of Santa hat at our stadium, that is ILNCP Stadium, on 11/1/2018. Sri Sopinil Daukirkar, official adjudicator of Guinness Book World Records, was present and witnessed and adjudicated that a Guinness record has been created. The theme of the program was "You are not alone, the world is with you." So I just would like to show you about the video presentation of the Ekta Special Olympics held at our campus on 2018. So this was not merely a presentation of Santa Hat alone. We made this 15,000 children to participate in various special category games, and they were all given prize rewards. There was everyone was a winner. So we could see the joy of these children, 15,000 children, the pleasure, and it was a very, very exciting event and got a lot of public eye and a lot of attention. Even this was presented in the Kerala Assembly, in the Legislative Assembly, and it was appreciated by all concerned. It was one and got placed in the Guinness Book of World Records. This is for your kind information, and thank you once again, all our respected panelists, for your gracious presence and your worthy presentation. To Madam Fiona, Mr. Scott, Mr. Michael, and everyone, all those who have contributed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kishore sir. On behalf of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, I'd like to thank Fiona for this wonderful session that you've taken. I think one day session was less comparatively, but you definitely introduced us to this particular session. All our PE teachers are motivated, and I'm sure with this, there'll be a lot of change, and we'll be having more ambassadors coming to this field. Thank you so much, Fiona, for your gracious presence and your contribution. I'd like to thank Scott. Scott, thank you so much for bringing in this particular topic and then helping us out. And I'm sure there are many who are geared, and you put the seats last time itself, but they all have started picking in. And very soon you'll come across, there's a lot of change. Everybody will have a passion, and we'll have unified sports. Thank you so much, Scott. I'd like to thank Mike. Mike, thank you so much, because you said to take up one particular sport and give a shot, and I'm sure they're going to do that. Thank you so much for bringing in adaptive physical education. We need your team's guidance so that we could do something in this field too, whereby this particular community, actually they need resources, they need helping hand, and I'm sure you should be able to guide us in this aspect. Thank you, Mike. I'd like to thank Professor Rosa, because as I always mentioned, you are the one who brought in this, the international platform, making it a real global event. I need to thank the president of the PESCOE for making it really a global event, because you have helped us to reach out the world level. Thank you, Madam Rosa. I also would like to thank Darling Kluka. She entered, and I feel so bad because I think there is some problem with connectivity issues. She was here. Thank you so much, Rosa. I'd like to thank Tiffany. Tiffany, thank you so much, because you were the light who brought in light, and with so much awards, Nightingale was here. And I'm sure that now you have helped in everybody rising up. So you'd say nobody's staying back. Thank you, Tiffany, for inspiring everybody over here. I'd like to also thank Lewis, because you have a session tomorrow. We all eagerly look forward to your session, because during pandemic and COVID, we are seeing how best we could reduce onto sedentariness. I'd like to thank Dr. Sanjay Prajapati being the co-host. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank Pranesh. Kishore sir, I'd like to thank, now for the information of all the panelists, we are very fortunate to have Dr. G. Kishore, who's the principal, not only a principal of this institute, but also the regional director, and who makes it a point of serving, getting into various NGO organizations, trying to see that the resources of the Sports Authority of India, lectured by national colleges, are availed at every step. That's one of the best things, and we are indeed fortunate to have Kishore sir with us, who is supporting in any mission and the vision that we have. Thank you, Kishore sir. I'd like to thank my PE teachers. Thank you so much, PE teachers. You've been there with us just for another 2 more days to go. But as one of our, I'd like to thank Nilesh for your contribution, and hope that I'm sure you would bring in more medals for the country. Thank you so much, and you would motivate more PE teachers to get into this, to getting into the unified sport. I'd like to thank my dear PE teachers. Without you, this program would not have been a success. Once again, at the end, thank you one and all. But before we end, there is a